Hi guys, welcome to our coffee times together. Today I'm here to talk to you about Gretel and Hansel, a movie that kind of has divided people because either you love it or you kind of hate it. So let's talk about it.
It's coffee time.
Since the movie Gretel and Hansel was announced, I put it on my list of some of the movies that I really had to check in 2020 because I've always been a fan of these dark fairy tales, and I was hoping that finally we were going to get a really dark story because the books from the Brothers Grimm are really dark, and I think that this movie did a great job. Gretel and Hansel. It is a supernatural dark horror film that is based on the story from the German Brothers Grimm, and we have here starring from the male roles Sophia Lillis and Alice Krige, that I know as the Borg Queen, and I think did a fantastic job in this movie. Now, when I went into this movie, I was aware that this was not going to be a conventional horror movie, but I had the feeling that a lot of people mistook this movie, you know, for one of those ABC kind of horror where you know what you're getting yourself into, and then they were confronted with a movie that it was more of an art house and an exploration of a lot of the things that not just your main Hansel and Gretel story that we know. And I think a lot of people, just because it was something more artsy and it was not your typical horror movie, so I feel like a lot of people did not like it just because of that. When I went to the cinema, when we were about to go into the room to watch the movie, I remember I told my boyfriend, a lot of people that are here right now are going to go into this movie expecting just a typical horror, and they're going to hate this movie, and I can already see it coming. So by the time that, you know, the movie starts, like 10-15 minutes into the movie, there is this group of people that literally stood up and left. And I was like, I knew it. It's like, I guess it's something that, you know, if you love movies that are unconventional, you're really gonna enjoy this movie. But if you like just your typical mainstream horror, this is definitely not a movie for you. There's also been a lot of debate about the title itself of the movie. A lot of people have been hating on the title just because the names were switched, which is such a childish behavior, and a lot of people were being like, oh, this is just because women now need everything turned to their sides or whatever, and this is feminazi or whatever, and it is just so dumb. A lot of people that complain about this have not even watched the movie, and the director itself, you know, Oz Perkins, explained the reason why he had switched the names. The reason why he called the movie Gretel and Hansel is basically because Gretel is carrying the whole movie. It's a story about her, so he thought it was just, you know, better just to put her name in the beginning, just because the story is based on her. That's it. So people just stop being stupid and hating about that. About a movie title, like, hello. And basically he was explaining that for him, he saw this movie as a coming of age story, as a growing up story of Gretel, and that's why also he made the age difference between Gretel and Hansel like a bigger gap age difference than the original story, because he wanted to emphasize, you know, that it was all about Gretel and her growth, and how sometimes things that we carry around with us, in this case Hansel, might be things that are blocking our path for growth. And I love that concept, and I love that he took this story and went to a different approach and made a really dark story out of it, with a lot of witchcraft that is also involved in this movie, which is something that I really appreciated. And, you know, for me, this was a fantastic exploration of the original story, and he took something from that and he made it his. And I think, you know, the movie does bring the message that he wanted to bring, and it is a fantastic story about Gretel. In the basic story of the Brothers Grimm, we find these brother and sister that are one day in the woods, and they find these house made out of candy where there is a witch inside that eats children. And similar to that, we find out in the beginning that Gretel and Hansel are in a very bad situation. They're very poor, their mom is kind of gone mad, and they find themselves lost in the woods trying to find a way to survive, and that is how they get to this house where the witch lives. Obviously in this darker tale, the house is not made out of food or candy, but I absolutely loved every little piece and detail from inside the witch's house. The acting in this movie was mostly carried by Sophia and by Alice. I think Alice Creek, that played the old witch, made such an amazing job and kind of stole the show a little bit. But I think Sophia Lillis has done so well in this movie, which is something completely different from your regular movie since she's still also very young. And I also love the score of this movie. I think the song choices, but not just the songs, also like the sounds that they utilized in the movie, were very effective when it comes to be creepy, to be unsettling, and they were merged so well with the story. The problem that a lot of people had with this movie was that the movie is mostly about visuals and giving you a lot of visual stimulation and letting you think about things instead of just spoon feeding you the information. So a lot of people don't like that. Some people just don't like to think for themselves or try to figure out why this is happening, or people just like sometimes to be spoon-fed. So this movie is definitely not for everybody, and I think that's the main reason why a lot of people think it's boring. The movie has a slow pace to it, but I think the reason why a lot of people found themselves bored is because the way this movie is shot, all the frames are kind of centered, so the images are always centered. Everything is shot like centric, and so your eyes don't have to move so much around off the screen. Of course, if you're someone that is like curious, and like me, I like to try to find Easter eggs, I like to find things like little mistakes and things like that, so I'm always looking all around, so maybe that's why it wasn't so boring for me. But the majority of the audience are just, you know, staring at whatever they're giving in the center, and because this movie was shot in a way that every frame was so centric, this could have led to a lot of people feeling bored. And also the dialogue was a little bit more crafted. It reminded me slightly of The Witch, like the whole concept of the movie and how it was shot and the way they talk. And so I think for a lot of people it was a little bit too art house, and that's why it made them bored and disconnect with the story. However, because the visuals and the whole scenery and cinematography was just so stunning, like every frame could be a painting, and it was just so beautifully shot, I think that might have led to a little bit of loss when it comes to the story. The story could have been developed a little bit more, things could have been explained a little bit more. The movie does leave a couple of things, questions unanswered, which I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think every movie needs to explain every little thing that happens. We don't need to get all the information like spoon-fed to us. I'm not a fan of that. I hate when movies are already assuming that I'm too stupid and that they need to let me know everything so that, you know, they make sure that I'm getting their point. So I rather have a movie that it's more ambiguous, that is kind of challenging the audience to think and to come to their own conclusions, and also sometimes leave open endings or relative open endings. I'm not a hater of that if it's done well. And so I think, you know, that because of all of these things, this movie is going to be one that either you hate or you love. In my case, I loved it. When it comes to jump scares, the movie does not really rely on jump scares at all. There's only one that I can remember towards the beginning of the movie, and it wasn't really like a huge jump scare or anything like that. But apart from that, the movie is trying, and for me, successfully just showing images that are very unsettling and very disturbing, and that, you know, it's what starts you questioning what's happening. And I really love, there is another story inside the story. So there is, at the beginning they explain the story of the girl with a pink hat, and I absolutely love that story and the character that they develop with that as well. Like, I would watch a movie just about that character. I'm just leaving that out there. So all in all, I think that this movie was slow paced, yes, but the whole images that this movie gives you, the whole creepiness that it has, I think it's a very good horror movie. If you like things like The Witch, perhaps Mandy, you know, unconventional movies that are not trying to be easy to understand. And maybe I would go as far as, you know, Ari Aster movies like Hereditary and Midsommar, like movies that are just different, and that's why, you know, it might not be for everybody. I ended up giving this movie a 4 out of 5 stars, and like I said, I really enjoyed it. It's definitely a movie that I would like to have for my collection in the future and give it a rewatch, but not for everybody. So let me know down below, what are your thoughts on the movie? Have you watched it already? Do you plan to? Do you like this kind of like art house movies at all? Let's talk about it in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Please give the video a big thumbs up before you leave. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and hit the notification bell as well. If you want to follow me in other social media, all the links are in the description box down below. And I hope to see you all in the next coffee time. Bye!